Hey everyone, welcome back to Coffee Chats.
Hello, beautiful people.
Nice to see you again, Miss Kyra. Do you have a drink check you'd like to share with us today?
Actually, I do. So I'm gonna gush about this for 2 seconds. I made this mug like probably 2 weeks ago.
It's so
And
cute.
inside, thank you. I mean, I'm not the best painter, but it brought me back to elementary school. You know what I mean? And I have a chamomile latte on the inside of it.
Yum, girl. That's way more fun than my water. Cold, iced water. So refreshing.
No, listen, hydration. That's what we're here for. We stand hydration. That's what matters.
Major key.
Absolutely. But I mean, again, super excited to launch another installment of the illustrious Coffee Chat series. I'm particularly excited to talk to our panelists today about something that really resonates at the heart of authors once their book crosses that publication threshold. So your book is out into the world. Now you actually need for people to engage with it. And the best sign of engagement? Reviews. So we're going to be talking about how to get more reviews.
Yes, reviews are extremely important to indie authors. I mean, think about any time you buy anything on Amazon, right? For example, if you go and you look at the reviews, you look at the ratings, you look at how many it has, and that can change whether or not you buy a certain thing. So really important in terms of exposure and credibility for authors. So today we want to talk tactically about how to get those reviews and who to go to and what to say. So we have two great panelists for you today who will be answering a number of questions, and we're going to go ahead and bring them on. Hey guys.
Hello everyone.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy to be here.
Would you guys pretty please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, Nick, I'll go first if you don't mind. My name is Amy Dong. I'm one of the author coaches for NDP. Maybe some of you have seen me teaching some of the nonfiction or creative workshops before. I published my book with NDP in 2020. It's called 21 Years Young Essays. And doing all the publishing process and helping first-time authors think through their marketing tactics has really made me think about how I want to improve what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, it's also just such a good way to engage with audience members when you seek reviews. So it's not always a numbers game as much as we like to look at that. And hopefully I can share some of that insight on what's made it the most rewarding experience for me when I'm asking for reviews. Over to you, Nick.
Hey everybody, thanks for that, Amy. Yeah, so my name is Nick. I was born and raised in North Jersey. I graduated from Fordham with a degree in economics in 2017. And I mean, just some background leading up to my book, The Brain Hut, which I published in New Degree Press in 2020. I really had a passion for competitive swimming growing up. And that was something that really required a lot of integrity and great character. And after I graduated college, you know, swimming wasn't really a thing anymore. And I kind of struggled with what I wanted to do in life. And I just felt, you know, this spiritual kind of inclination towards writing. And just months later, I discovered this program through New Degree Press. And I published a book in 2020. And I just, it really changed my life. And it's a book based off psychology. And I look forward to getting into, you know, the book review aspect of it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. So to kick things off, and as a reminder to the audience, at any point in time, you are welcome to ask a question in the chat over here on the side. Drop it, and we might throw it on the screen and ask our lovely panelists. So to kick things off, first question for you guys. How did you mobilize your network to leave more reviews, or to leave reviews, period, for your books?
Yeah, I think there are two different ways to go about this. For me, one of the ways I just engage with my audience is through my newsletter. I don't make it weekly or monthly, but I always share one with anyone who pre-ordered and anyone who signs up through my website. Pro tip, having a personal website is really helpful and it establishes a lot of credibility after you've published. But when I share insights in my life or what I am doing, because my brand is mostly around, you know, self-reflection, vulnerability, openness. At the bottom, I will still always have a link to my book and I tie everything I'm saying to a lot of the general themes of uncertainty and what makes your life meaningful. And through that, I remind people subtly that, oh, hey, if you've read the book, it would be great if you shared a review. That's one way of going about it, just like subtle marketing, always by sharing other things that you're doing with your life. The second way is direct messaging people, even if that's someone that you don't actually know, but a stranger that you know who has bought your book. And in New Degree Press, a lot of people used to call me like the direct message queen. And I don't know how I feel about that, but I I once got temporarily banned from sending messages on social media platforms because like Facebook thought I was a bot. But the reason is because I was really intentional about sending very personalized messages to people to ask, how are they doing, if they had a chance to read my book, and if so, could you leave a review that it can range anywhere from 3 words to a paragraph if they felt that way. And sometimes this can feel a little bit annoying or a little bit frustrating because you're like, I don't want to bug people to buy my book and then review my book. But to them, it's whether they do it or not, it's like, oh, this person just wants to know how I feel. And I always say, please leave an honest review. Like it's great to me when I get critiques on my book as well, so I can improve my writing as a writer. And I just follow up with that multiple times. And I sort of choose the people that I think will respond more positively to that. And it actually makes it easier if you're reaching out to strangers that have bought your book as well. Just say like, hey, I'm the author. What did you think of it? No pressure to leave a review, but do it if you have time. And that's definitely gotten me the most reviews, just subtle overall marketing and then direct messages, especially when someone has just reached out and said, hey, I just read your book. It's been great, because that's a perfect way to be like, oh, if you really liked it, share. Or, hey, I just read your book. It made me think a lot. And I actually have an argument and like, I don't agree. And it's like, okay, great. Leave a review so other people can see your thoughts. So that's how I would explain mobilizing a network.
What do you say to someone after, if they do leave a review for you? What do you do after that? Because you've put a lot of effort into engaging with them and communicating, and it would be kind of awkward to just disappear. So what do you do with that one?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I do just disappear, which is probably not the best thing to do, but
maybe they're okay with that though. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I think it depends on their response to my request. Usually they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, would love to do that. And then sometimes they'll be like, I just read the review, like if you want to look at it, go for it. And then I will read it and offer, my honest thoughts and say, thank you so much for your time. And this really means a lot. And hopefully other people won't take my word for it. They'll take your word for it. And it makes them feel like they're almost a co-owner of the marketing process. And I think that's so important. Say, you're building your community, you're building an audience that can speak about your work in their own personal way. And that's what makes it so great.
Nick, what about you?
Yeah, Amy, that was great. I guess I could kind of respond in a similar style where there's 2 ways about it. So strictly speaking, I mean, you want to message somebody no more than twice. You want to message somebody first and, don't be like, just leave a book review. But you want to be like, check out my book, give it a read, and I'd appreciate, you kind of like add it like icing on the cake, and I appreciate a book review. And your next follow-up wants to be at least a month later. So my book isn't that long. I read my book after I published it, and I read it like word sense by sense. I wasn't like, oh, I already know this. And, I read it in like 4 hours. That's strictly speaking. But I feel like, the other way to go about it is, I mentioned in the intro about like swimming and stuff. When I was kind of struggling out of college when I was 23 or something, what I wanted to do outside of my 9-to-5 job, and then this writing thing comes into play. It was very emotional for me because I felt that very strong pull towards it. And never in my life, I think like 2 months into the program, I never, like shed tears of joy in my life. It's only happened once. And I did like in January, February when I started the program. I'm like, I'm going all the way with this. This is the most important thing to me. It's more important to my job, everything. And I kept it very private though. So I only told maybe like 2 friends about it. And I just told them once and it was like, whatever. But I kept it very private until the pre-sale in the summertime. And I was a bit nervous. I think like the pre-sale is also a correlation of getting book reviews after you publish. It's all about traction, right? So I was kind of nervous because I get to raise like 5K in a month. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I ended up raising over that, 5K in 2 weeks. And then I took a break the third week. And then the last week, I tried a bit more. So I got a little over 6K. I'm like, wow, like I was very impressed, but I still stayed focused on the book. And I think like, this special quote I follow is like, it's more in the poetry than in the poet. So the book I wrote about is a self-help book. And growing up swimming, which is a hard sport, I feel like the reputation I gave to people was that I'm always going to persevere in the sport no matter what, no matter if I succeed or fail. So people know I have that passion for self-growth. So that correlates in what I wrote, and I knew people would be a big fan of it. And I knew my network would, follow along. So the pre-sale was a good sign. But I think if something really means something to you, the energies of the universe will work along with it. So after I published, I wasn't like, in December, I wasn't like, leave a book review. I want many book reviews. I did say in some posts, and I was like, all right, here's my book, please leave a review. But I'd message people maybe a week or two later, be like, hey, I appreciate a book review. And then follow up in like January, February. And after February, I kind of like stopped. I think I hit like over 100 Amazon reviews by March, like 2-3 months later, and I kind of just like stopped. But I just, the vast majority of them are people I know, and they've read the book. It's a matter of them taking the time to, go on Amazon and write something. Again, I think it just goes to like who you are, not on social media. I honestly didn't post much of my book at all. Until the pre-sale, I probably made 2 posts on Facebook about my book. But I kept it very private. I think it's who you are internally and how people perceive your kind of outlook in life, in real life, face to face. That kind of makes that impact in regards to book reviews or pre-sale. So that's my second way of looking at it.
I think I hear in what both of you are saying, it's like book reviews in and of itself, or in and of themselves, are an important metric, or can be an important metric, but as long as the pursuit of them comes in tandem with your overall growth as an author and as a person, like that engagement is important to maintain and sustain, but it shouldn't be at the expense of or distract away from who you are and what your goals are in the broader trajectory of your author brand or journey. But bearing that in mind, the next question we have for you is, did you have any specific goals, numerical or otherwise, in getting reviews? Or is it a bit more like just gathering them and sort of seeing where things land?
I was hesitant to set goals in fear of coming off almost disingenuous to myself, because I started off the project being like, as long as I write this for myself, that is enough. And everything else, like Nick said, is sort of icing on the cake. It's extra, it's bonus, and that should be something I feel very grateful for. At the same time, I think setting small, later on, I was like, but I still want to try to get reviews in an honest way. And what I did was set small chunks of goals. So maybe I would try to get 5 in this week or in this 2 weeks, and then 10 in the next. And that way it's much less daunting than saying by the second month, I want 100.
That's way more manageable.
So much more manageable. And even when I'm thinking now, I'm thinking, now that I'm having this conversation, I also, other, like, life goes on after you publish your book, and sometimes you want to prioritize other things and instead of receiving book reviews, and that's totally okay. For example, I haven't been reaching out to people, and I haven't felt guilty about that per se, because I know there are other things that I'm also very much enjoying spending my time on. But now having this conversation, I'm feeling a lot more motivated to then be like, oh, I still really care about the book. I live the messages every day. Like, I would love to hear what people say. And I just did a mini sale of paperbacks and hardcovers to celebrate the 1-year anniversary. So in my mind, it's when you have small chunks or maybe even small moments to celebrate, or you do a sale or something happens, that's a great way to then be like, okay, in the next 1 to 2 months, I'm going to follow up with these 5 to 10 people and just see if I can get that. Because every 5 or 10 really adds up. And like Nick said, now he has over 100, which is amazing. And most authors never get over, let alone sales. They rarely get over 10 to 50 reviews at all. So bite-sized
But that
chunks.
50 mark is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyra is actually the one who taught me why 50 is a really important mark on Amazon.
Yeah, and I think a lot of listeners right now would love to hear that, Kyra. So if you want to share.
So just super briefly, so if you get a review on Amazon, like a review at all, you actually are doing better than 80% of the books that are existence in Amazon at all. So like, power to us because we all have reviews. But the thing is that once you reach 50 reviews, your book is automatically incorporated into Amazon's newsletter database. So that if somebody's a subscriber to Amazon Books, your book will be more discoverable to them. So that's why 50 is an important threshold mark on Amazon specifically.
I never knew that.
Surprise!
Oh, Amy, are you done? Okay, awesome. What was the question again? I forgot. No, I was listening. I just forgot the question.
No, you're good. Did you have any specific goals, numerical or otherwise, in getting reviews?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So it's funny, thinking back, I said, I hit over 100 after the first 3 months. I think right now I'm at around 110 or something like that. Right. It's like, wow, how did I, do that in such a quick pace? And, I think I told a fellow author too, I was making a joke. I want to get 200 by the end of 2021. Obviously got nowhere near there, but I think the reason how I got over 100 is because of the hype, because everybody found out midway I was writing a book, and then it got published 6 months later. Everybody was following along with it. And then, like in a heartbeat, people will be like, yeah, I got you. Let me read the book and I'll leave a review. I specifically did not have a goal, but I think to have over 100 reviews the first 3 months as a first-time author, again, writing something I want to do for a lifetime. So this is good motivation to take that second step forward and work on my next book. Like I want to go to novels. The Brain Hut isn't a novel, but it's a creative nonfiction. So I want to work on my creativity, and that's a good. It's inspirational how people had some, I got so much traction in the book that it'll help me work on my next novel. So it's like, I could go on social media. Like I said, I quit after like March about like reaching out to people for book reviews. So if I really tried hard every single day, who knows how many I would have by now. But it's like I'm wasting my time when I could work on my next book and kind of, work on my skill and let it grow over time, rather than just focus on one book that I know could have been much better, So I don't you can't think numbers. You gotta think skill. That's my answer.
So my problem is now I am kind of thinking numbers, and I have a question for both of you. Do you think that it would be a productive marketing strategy to say, hey, my goal, like I have 33 reviews right now, and my goal is to hit 50 in order to get this XYZ, right? Can you guys help me get there? Like, would putting that out there publicly help then you also do have to do the personal outreach. You can't just like throw it at the wall and hope it sticks. Do you think that would help? Yeah, it's a tricky one.
My personal take on that is like, if you're at 33 and you want to reach 50, reach out to personal friends, like through social media, direct message, and explain it to them. Just be blunt about it. Like, I want to reach 50. Please, read my book. I'd appreciate like an honest review or something. Like, what I realized, some of the reviews I have are from people I didn't know at the time of publication. So like, if you like, I moved into a new apartment, so I met new people, and like you give them a good first impression, be like, oh, I have an extra copy of my book, and then you write in there, I appreciate an Amazon review, and you don't act pushy at all. You just ask once, and if you don't, you don't get it, you don't get it. But I think it's just to be as honest as possible. Reach out to friends you already know. Try to network with as many people as possible. Because the beauty about being an author is it's like a lifetime achievement that you have a book, and you could go up to anybody and be like, hey, I'm an author, and they'll think that's so awesome. And if you really give a first impression, they could really feed into that emotion and leave a review eventually. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think I will echo Nick's sentiment on asking friends in that way. I'm trying to think if I'm a random person and I had some stranger say, I have 33 reviews. I know you read my book. Can you leave a review? I honestly think I think it would feel a little gimmicky. And I don't know if that would help the author establish their credibility as opposed to sending me a more personal message saying, hey, I know that you're someone who bought the book. I wonder if you finished reading it. Like, would you mind leaving a review? And no worries if you don't have time. But of course, like Nick and I went through the cohort at the same time. If Nick had ended up reading my book, I'd have been like, all right, Nick, you know the drill. Like, please, if like just leave a review. It can be a 1-star review if you didn't like it, but I just would love the review because you're a fellow author and you know what that means. I think it just feels more. It feels more sincere. So as long as you are being sincere and you know why you are asking someone in the way that you are asking them, then that's the reason why. So I would hesitate on just blasting that message out in like a public forum and more say like to your mom, I need one more review. Just give it to me right now. That's how I would approach it.
Well, and that can be a tough one. Every time my mom tried to leave a review for me on Amazon kept telling her no. Because I think it's the same last name thing. It won't let you like, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. No, I mean, I wouldn't, say in that kind of way in a Facebook post, like in public. I'd do it more, again, like personally, like again, like you mentioned a family member, a fellow author or something, but I wouldn't post it publicly, no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, personalized outreach is something that we talk about throughout the entire process. And when numbers are involved, especially, that's the way to go. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But speaking of which, like as we're talking about gathering reviews, whether it be from people we know, like personally, or people we know read our books, or people we know are interested in the subject matter our books address, are some reviews more helpful to receive than others?
Yes. The answer is yes. The reason why is because I think people are generally intelligent and they can tell in the wording of a review if it sounds like a bot in a way, because people know that on every every big product there is someone out there who's probably been paid or been asked to just write a positive review regardless of if they've actually read it. And I know for a fact there are some people who probably wrote like a 1 or 2 sentence review of my book that were very nice but not really substantive. And what I instead appreciate are reviews that include a photo of the book and like highlights on a certain page where someone has really resonated or clicked, or if someone just wants to dive into like one of the essays or in one thing that stood out to them. And I actually love when reviews have critiques or when there are things that people don't like, because that to me is like, okay, great. Not everyone is going to agree with everything. And in fact, nonfiction should inspire some kind of controversy. Like great books are those that inspire further discussion. And a lot of times those discussions are around points of tension. So I look for length is actually a pretty good indicator, because that just means that they actually know what they're talking about and aren't just writing a fake review as someone who's only read like the first 2 lines of a book. Second, I look for nuance in, maybe they liked one part and didn't like the other. And third, something that I like to do in my reviews for other books is leave 1 or 2 quotes that were like, this was like the essence of the book. This is what really stuck with me. And I think it helps other readers figure out if they want to read it. And that's a good review, because a book review for people who haven't read a certain book is so important in helping them decide if that's something that they want to read. We're all kind of, we all have some sort of a herd mentality at points. And if you see the best-selling books on Goodreads, for example, there's always one review that has a couple hundred likes. That's a really positive review. But then there's also usually one review right underneath it that has a couple hundred likes as well. That's a more negative review. And depending on what camp you generally fall into, that really helps you determine if that's a good read for you. That being said, no, especially for authors, there's no such thing as bad press. Like every review, even the bad reviews, are so important, because if you get a totally shitty review, there's going to be someone who wants to read it because they're like, oh my God, I can't, like, I want to read a book that's really bad and potentially makes me feel good about myself, for like, why was the review that bad? So that's what I would say. Like, any review is a good review, but there are tiers and like quality.
Yeah. Your book can't be for everyone. And even the classics have 1-star reviews.
Exactly.
All books are subjective, and I mean, in regards to my Amazon reviews, most of them are 5 stars. I think maybe 2, 3, or 4 stars. But there's one 3-star, but it doesn't have a written review. I'm like, I want to read what that person wants to say. Like, I got excited. I think every review counts. If you personally know somebody and they think your book is a 4 out of 10, but you're good friends with them, they're going to give you 5 stars. But it's important to really read in depth what they have to say. And like Amy said, those bad reviews are definitely they're crucial, because if you want to excel as an author in the long term, you got to learn from your mistakes. And like they say, like, no matter how good of a writer you are, you could be an iconic writer. Nobody's the master of the craft.
Two quick things are like, one's a quick comment and one is a follow-up question for you guys. So one about in terms of like reading into book reviews that have critiques, or like being cognizant of things like the amount of stars somebody leaves. Honestly, it's the strangest thing, because somebody might say, oh my goodness, I love this book so much, 3 stars. Or what happened to me personally was I got a 2-star review, and the person said this book wasn't for me, but it reminded me of Octavia Butler. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, so you give me a 2-star review and say that this book reminds you of Parable of the Sower? Like, I don't know whether to cry tears of joy or sadness right now. Like, I'm confused. It was the most surreal moment. So, like, again, like, to your point, to both of your points, Nick and Amy, like, ultimately, all feedback is helpful, but don't get too caught up in what that might mean numerically. Of course, 5-star reviews are preferred, right? But like, the more feedback, the more substantive feedback you can glean, the better. I mean, it's not that the numbers don't matter at all, but like, again, if somebody leaves 3 stars and said they love it, or if somebody gives you a 5-star review but then says, but I have all these issues with it, then, like, feedback is feedback. People leave it in different ways.
Yeah, I have a 3-star review that sticks with me. I take it with me all the time, because in the review, she writes what I liked about the book, and she gives me all this praise. And then in the second half of the review, she goes, what I didn't like, I wish it was longer. And I'm like, wait, you don't like it? You gave me 3 stars because you wanted more? Like, I don't know. That one sticks with me.
Mm-hmm. And then the follow-up question I had for you both, I mean, because you guys were talking about the sources of your reviews, and many of them being people that you either know personally or people that read your book and are like involved in your network, but a bit more tangentially. Have either of you pursued, or do you have experience with book reviewers, like submitting your book to be reviewed by book bloggers, etc.?
Yeah. I've had a couple of reviews from like book. I searched them on Instagram, and I've got some reviews. Actually, my favorite reviews from somebody who does book reviews, and I think you definitely could find them on Instagram if you search book reviewers. And hers was the best. I think, what do they call it, like Vine Review or something like that. Those who are very popular on Amazon. She was the one who did that, and I really liked it. But then there are those who don't do it for free. I don't go above and beyond to ask them. But yeah, I mean, for me, going back to your last question, I ideally wanted to have over 100 reviews. So once I hit that, I kind of calmed down. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to reach out to people who will do it for free, who are professional book reviewers. And yeah, you want to mix it with people who are in your network. And I've had some people I don't even know who left book reviews, and those are the most exciting, because they actually thoroughly read your book.
Yeah, There are so many different avenues to look for genuine book reviewers who you don't know. One is through Instagram. A lot of people have websites like Kyra where you can make requests, and a lot of the times if you look for, there's a web, Book Sirens. Is that the one that I think that's the one I used once long time ago when I was like, I'm gonna try my best for this, but and then I stopped. But you can basically look up book reviewers who really like to read certain genres. So for example, if you wrote a historical fiction, you go on booksirens.com, you can say, I want to see the most influential book reviewers for this genre. And then you can reach out to them at your own risk. And a lot of the times they are free in terms of, as long as you send them a copy of your book and you give them a certain time frame, they'll be like, I'll get you an honest review within like 3 to 6 months. Of course, it takes a lot of work to review, to do all this hard work, and a lot of them appreciate tips, and I think that's actually a great way to support them. Some of them are paid, so it's more like if you have a budget for it, go for it. The great thing about book reviewers is that they're going to give you an honest review because they have nothing on the line. Like it won't affect them either way, and because they don't know you, it doesn't matter to them if they hurt your feelings, which in one way is like a great thing. Like I struggle asking my friends to review sometimes because I don't want them to care about my feelings when they're talking about a book. But if I got asked by my friend to review their book, I would definitely care about that. So there's a little bit of tension there. With book reviewers, it's not like that at all. That being said, beware of scamming book reviewers where they reach out to you and are like, if you pay me a certain amount of money, we'll give you a free review. Like that's I know
That's not free.
Yeah, they're not free, number one. And number two, like sometimes I've heard like they don't actually leave the review or like something weird happens. Anyways, just beware of those. But I do think reaching out to honest book reviewers, and you can look at their past book reviews to see if you like them. And I don't see at all that that's like a bad way to go. I have maybe a couple on Goodreads or Amazon, and it's really nice to have a complete stranger read it and give you feedback in a sense. Yeah.
You both touched on something that I was going to ask about, which was paid book reviews. And I think you kind of answered my question in that my primary question was going to be, I have a lot of, hey, can I read your book? I'm a professional book reviewer. It's $35. Those messages in my inbox. And sometimes that's the most important piece, Amy, that thing that you mentioned is just go and look at their past book reviews. If you're at all questioning whether or not this is a bot or a scam, go look at the past things that they've reviewed, look at their Instagram page, because just because they have 175,000 followers doesn't mean anything. Look at the engagement on the posts, look at the quality of the images, the quality of the words that they spent time putting together. That would be my biggest piece of advice on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Kyra?
Well, I concur with all aforementioned statements. People are really out here, like, and sometimes they're not people. Sometimes they are, in fact, bots. So just be cognizant of, especially since there are so many people who are willing to do it for free. Like, this is not to say never pay for it, but just be very, very conscious of that, especially considering that there are plenty of other aspects of your book journey that require payments and a little bit more, quote, justifiably so, if that makes sense. Like book awards, marketing packages, giveaways, etc. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But to move on to our next question, since we talked a little bit about like how reviews like help you have a broader sense of how readers are engaging with your book and give you a sense of how you can grow feedback-wise as an author, have you used reviews in your book marketing?
That's a great question. I mostly use it on my website and like non-personal messages. I never go to a friend and be like, this person reviewed my book, therefore you should read my book. But on the front of my book, on the back of my book, on my website, I just have a whole section of like, read the reviews. Like, you don't have to, it's basically a saying of like, you don't have to take my word for it. Go look at what other people have said instead. And that's a sign of credibility. It's a sign of confidence in your own work. And it's a sign that you're not afraid to hide anything good or bad from your audience. And like Mackenzie said, like you don't only, it's great when you have bad reviews, because it just shows that your book has the depth to engage people along, like across the spectrum of thought. I I definitely, I would say it's a tactic to use like either your best quote or the most important person who said a quote on the cover of your book. I got really lucky and got someone from the New York Times to review my book. So of course that's like the one that I put on the front of the book. And it's a sign of, okay, someone who works at the New York Times has read it. And that for me is a sign of informal authority. And it kind of sucks in a way, because they're just another human being, and like we're all just human beings, and I'm basically saying like that person's words are worth more. But that whenever you are marketing a product or selling a product, that's like how all influencing works, right? If you have a Kendall Jenner holding up a product, that's going to get like a bajillion more bucks than if there you have like an Amy Dong holding up the same product, even though I would argue that maybe I actually care about the product more. But yeah, yeah, Kyra was spilling the tea, send this to Kendall Jenner. No, but book reviews can definitely be helpful when marketing. It's also great to, if you get additional book reviews that you love, update your Amazon page with them, update Barnes and Nobles, anywhere where you're selling them. There, you can always edit that section that's like about the book. And the more people that you have saying great things, the more places that you have like different people saying different things, it's just easier from like a pure numbers perspective to like have people look you up on the internet. I think at some point, some of my friends were just messing around and they were Googling my name into Google, and they're like, wow, Amy, you have your own Google page. And I was like, why? And to all my people in software engineering were like, probably just because people have looked you up enough and you're on the internet enough for Google to recognize that it's something that people care about. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So just putting that out there onto social media, onto a book, onto a website is helpful in the long run, even if you don't see it now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Amy. That's some great advice. On my end, mine's kind of different. It's not so much advice, but personally, I never use a single one of my reviews to market my book. I sort of, once I published, I wanted to get the reviews, and I was just like, all right, I want to use this, because through the New Degree Press program, networking was very huge, and traction and all the friendships I've had through New Degree Press. And I really wanted to use it. I kind of refer to it as ultra learning to like move on to the next phase in writing. But in regard, again, like I was saying earlier, it's more about the poetry than the poet. But in the long term, kind of like Amy was saying, the long term. But in the long term, it will become more of the poet, right? If you see like a book from Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, right, you'll immediately get it just because of the name of the author. But earlier in their career, they received a lot of rejections, right? Books are subjective. They received a lot of rejections, and they weren't about like, oh, I need more reviews. It was just like, who's going to fall in love with the content, the poetry, right? Eventually, one thing leads to the next, and it's all about the skill. It's almost like sports, right? Like if you want to recruit somebody, you could say somebody who's like number one in the country is very good, but then you could say it's very good to somebody else who's like ranked number 100, right? But it's like what kind of position does the sports team want, right? They have to be there and see how the person performs. That's right. When you read a book, it's about the emotion that the reader gets. And once they get, they're like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I love this book. So you want to, again, it's just all in the skill. And thing about reviews, like I said earlier, it's not a numbers game. It shouldn't be so much about, again, you don't want to reach out to somebody more than twice. It's more about your content and having full trust in what you write about. And you want to make it personal and really not care whether somebody leaves a review or not. Just do you, and there are people out there, strangers out there, who will appreciate who you are and what you want to express in your writing.
I mean, to that end, especially when you were talking about like strangers resonating with your overall brand, like people resonating with the poetry and the poet, because people are drawn to the source of the art. I guess something that's been becoming increasingly popular, whether it be the rise of TikTok, whether it just be the social media age in general, there's kind of like this notion of like virality, or like a book going viral or a concept going viral, and the concept and the way in which some things or ideas become more popular than others. I mean, some of it is like very overtly, like people have the resources to pump a bunch of ads into the ecosystem, but other times it seems like a bit more randomized and like algorithms. So I'm all of this is to say, do you guys think about how reviews can play a role in the virality of like your book idea or concept? Or do you just, again, think more in terms of, I'm gathering reviews and feedback for the sake of feedback and not for the sake of, I guess, algorithmic traction?
I'd say, again, it's more about the traction more than the reviews. It's more about the personal connection you have with your readers. I mean, to prove my point, when I was 23 and I was struggling and stuff and everything, I was pretty big on Facebook and stuff and Instagram, but I permanently deleted all my social media except for LinkedIn. If it weren't for LinkedIn, I wouldn't have found the X program. But I deleted all my Facebook and my Instagram, and I was like, I need to find myself. If you want to find yourself, you got to lose yourself. And I just didn't care what other people thought. I wanted to, like, what's this for Nick D'Souza, right? How could I be me so in the long term I could really contribute to charity, and spread my gifts to others. So eventually, I found the program through LinkedIn and stuff. And I remember like second month into the program, I messaged Eric. I'm like, is social media important for this? He's like, yeah, you'll probably need it. I'm like, oh, and then I had to make sure my account wasn't blocked after adding like 200 people the very first day. It's gonna be a scam account. So, but I still had full confidence. And at the time, I didn't know there was gonna be a pre-sale. I didn't know how to raise 5,000 a month. I didn't know like it even go on Amazon. I was just like, this is what something means to me. It just comes from the heart. And naturally, I got all this traction. And again, just to answer your question, has to come from the heart, kind of similar to my last answer. And everything also flow naturally. Yep.
Oh, Nick, that like made me feel so warm and fuzzy. And I'm so glad you went before, because my honest I would just be like, I'm so terrified of TikTok and technology and social media. And I really just wish, review wise or like virality wise, we were 200 years in the past where like people just got discovered through. I don't even know how people got discovered. Anyways, that is to say, I don't have a TikTok. I don't think I'll ever get it because I don't know how to use one. And I'm an old lady. But it's hard because so much matters on social media. To be found a lot of the times is tied to being very big on social media. And it's very hard now to just have your book in a bookstore and then just wait for it to be discovered. That being said, I don't think you have to go viral to do well. And I think there is it's like a logical gap of, it's like the whole fallacy of like, I shouldn't do something unless I know I can do it perfectly. And that is the biggest excuse for not starting something. And I have a lot of friends who have that mindset. And I'm like, you are cheating yourself out of the opportunity to try and learn from what you've done before. I think the same thing applies to social media. The sheer act of posting or just sharing like a picture of yourself like happy because you just wrote 200 pages or something, that is infinitely more powerful than trying to make a post, trying to go viral, because it's like the whole, you won't get an award if you're just chasing after the award. You're going to get an award if you're doing what you really like. You're just being yourself, and someone's like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is very honest, and this is very this person. And that sounds super cheesy and cliche, but cliches are cliches because they're true. So
if you're out shopping and you have no money, you're gonna find everything. But if you are out shopping and you have money, you're not gonna find anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Kyra, to your point, it's also, if you go viral, amazing, right? Like, ride the wave. And if you don't go viral, that is not at all an indicator that you have failed in any way. So I think that's
No.
what I would leave people with. And especially for first-time authors, like we look at people like David Sedaris and Jhumpa Lahiri and Rick Riordan and all these, like J.K. Rowling, and we're like, oh my God, like they made it. But we never thought that when they were writing their first draft of their first book, like no one knew who they were. And that's sort of where we all started. Like we were all first-time authors, and it's not fair to yourself to compare yourself to like a very viral or famous figure. It's a huge reason why NDP is fantastic, because it really helps first-time authors like get their feet in the water and just try for themselves. So yeah.
Well, and virality really means nothing if there's nothing that comes of it. In that, what you'll see a lot is like they'll post something, it'll go viral, and in the comments they'll be like, how come y'all aren't following me though? Like it'll go viral and then nobody will follow or engage with any other content that person does thereafter. Or even if they do, let's say you gain, it gets millions of views and you gain 10,000 followers. Well, that's great, but followers mean nothing unless they're doing something,
Right.
Otherwise it's all just up in the cloud. It's all just social media. It's all just there.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
And to pick off of wow, can I speak English? To piggyback off of what Amy was just saying, Rick Riordan, for example, he actually was an adult mystery writer for years before he wrote his first Percy Jackson book. And most people don't know that about him because they just know him as the Percy Jackson, well, now Rick Riordan Presents author. And so it's just, again, people have whole careers. J.K. Rowling with being a divorced mom, like that whole thing. Like, everybody starts somewhere, and we can't expect for success to happen to us overnight. And we definitely can't rely on algorithms to get us there, because there are always, like, on my feeds for like social media, every once in a while there will be something like, here's how you go viral on XYZ platform. And like, are some of those tips helpful? Potentially. Are some of those tips helpful in like how you frame reviews to make them more appealing to audiences? Maybe. But again, chasing that is exhausting, because then you start to like undermine your own voice and your own marketing and your own book presence. And that sucks. You don't want to be a cookie cutter version of something that is not you. Like, and that's something I feel like both of you are saying. Like, you're both calling us and our audience to be authentic to who they are.
Chasing virality isn't fun. What I do find fun is kind of gamifying social media, and hear me out. The going into it, learning from tips and from other people and getting better at it, right? Because you can be good or better. You can improve. There's always room for improvement on social media. And it's fun to see engagement improving with the lessons that I learn and kind of gamifying. And that just makes it more fun for me. But the other piece of it too is staying authentic to yourself and not losing yourself completely in it. Otherwise, that takes all the fun out.
Oh, I love that so much. It's like, yeah, instead of comparing yourself to other people, just compare. It's another cliche, like be better than the person you were yesterday. And then it's just fun. And it's like you're tracking your own progress. And then it's like not for anyone else, it's for yourself. And then you're like, oh, well, other people watching? Cool.
Yeah, just to add to that, like, I think the thing about social media, like I currently have, because if I want to be an author long term, I can't delete it again. But I don't have the Facebook and Instagram app open. Like I deleted the app itself. But what we realize about social media nowadays is like anybody who's mediocre is kind of put on is like praised for something. They'll praise anything. Like you look at sports games and they'll praise like something that's silly that goes on. And I just I think that, I could get like 20,000 Amazon reviews overnight, right? But it's like, it doesn't change the content of the book. And I wouldn't be proud of it because it's not the best written book of self-help at all. It's very, to somebody who like reads about all these psychologists that I wrote about, this is like all second nature kind of stuff to them. But somebody who like is kind of lost and never really put forward to read or, these type of books, it'd be like, oh wow, this is 5 out of 5. So again, it's like, don't go crazy over the reviews. Like just always look at it as a way to build on.
I like that. The review doesn't change the content of your book. Like, don't let reviews, however many or however few, change your own self-worth and view of the work that you produced.
Yeah,
I feel like
100%.
I'm getting a mini therapy session. It's just so nice. Yeah. And me trying to hit like the 50 or like the 100 marks, like it's fine, it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, like for me, like the goal was hit 3 digits and just relax because I know I couldn't know the book could have been better and stuff, and just move on to the next book. You live and learn.
Well, so in other books, reading, writing, because they say great writers read. Have your reading habits changed since becoming a published author? And are you more conscious of leaving reviews for the books that you do read?
Yes and yes. I've always thought that I always knew that I was going to write in the style of my favorite authors, and I was very intentional about like trying to read at least 20, 30 books a year, and my favorites were always in two genres, like creative nonfiction, sort of self-helpy, or autobiographical, biographical nature books, and or like humor essays or different types of essays. And now that I actually, when I was writing the book, I literally took out like 10 books that I have loved and returned back to when I needed um, company or companionship or just older people who I didn't know to just help me figure out what my life meant. I would go to these same books. So I took them out while I was writing, and I like great. I don't know. You always try to imitate, like it's imitation is the best form of flattery or whatever that quote is. And I like firmly believe like you should be writing in the style of your favorite authors, because if that's good writing. So why not copy it? It just in your own way. So after publishing the book, I'm still a big fan of those genres, and I am more intentional about I'm trying to finish all the books written by the same people, because I know I can learn about their writing journey, because their first book is definitely not the same as their last book. And it doesn't mean that it's always an upward trajectory. Like there are several books by Kurt Vonnegut, whom I dearly love, where some of them I'm like, wow, that was his first book. I can see that was his first book. Or it was in the middle and I was like, oh, that was so not as good as like Breakfast of Champions or something. So it's just such a great way to have fun and also do your research. And I like taking notes as a writer is so important. If you like physical books, like circle, write, star things. If an ebook, do like the highlighted notes thing. About intentional reviews. Oh my God, it has changed so much. I never reviewed a book before I wrote my book. Or if I did review it, it would be verbally, like word of mouth recommendations to other people. But now that I have Goodreads, and Kyra and Mackenzie got me super into Goodreads, every single book, I retrospectively like went back and reviewed books that I'd read in middle school. And for me, it's like if you like collecting things, it's such a great way to feel good about progress. Like you've read all these books and you had things to say about them, and it's your way of almost like making your mark as an author yourself, like critiquing other authors' work. About the intentionality and the quality of my reviews, I've also tried to be a lot more substantive. And I'm not just like, great read, 5 stars. I'm like, this was a great read for people who are at this point in their life, have these kinds of questions, and are looking for this kind of thing. Or this book is a good read if like the following 3 quotes really stick out to you. And I'll just like list 3 quotes that stick out to me. And if it's not a good read, I'll try to my best to explain why in a not snarky or just like rude way. Just be like, this wasn't for me for these reasons. And yeah, I think being an author changes that, because it's always a thing like you start caring about the things that are personally important to you. And I would encourage people to do that. The one tricky part that Kyra and I have often talked about, though, is when someone asks for a review, and for you, it wasn't like the 5-star, like it wasn't the best book. And that's where I actually still struggle. Like, how do I tell a friend of mine that to me, it might've been a 2-star book, but to someone else, it might've been a 5-star book. And I haven't left a review yet because I'm not really sure what that would mean. But that's where I sort of get a little sticky, and I'm like, I don't want bias to creep in, but I am much more a fan of like very strictly honest reviews. I'm much more choosy and picky about what I give my 5 stars to. And I know Kyra also talks about this because she's a fabulous book reviewer, but those would be like, that's what I would say.
Wow, that is great. I think after my experience after having my book published as an author, it's great to have that title author, right? Because now it actually inspired me to network with other authors. So I met somebody through a family party who read my book and she enjoyed it. I'm like, did you really enjoy it? And she's like, yeah. The first thing I drink in the morning is a glass of water. I really enjoyed your book. I'm like, wow. And then she told me about somebody else she met earlier in the day who's also an author. And I got in touch with her. I thought hitting 3-digit reviews in 3 months was something. I met her, she's much older, but I talked to her sometimes, like, a couple times every month. And she got published through like one of those top 4 publishers. She got over 1,000 in less than 6 months of reviews on Amazon. I'm like, how do you do that? Well, it's a publisher. She obviously doesn't reach out to all these people. But the bottom line I'm trying to say here is, like, I feel like the best books there's like a formula, right? Like 2 + 2 = 4. The best books will focus on 2 + 2, but they won't give you the 4 because books are subjective and we all have our different ways of interpreting them. I think as an author, after reading, I've never worked with other authors outside of NDP. It's a great joy to like give them feedback on a phone call or face to face from the author themselves, right? It's great to do like an Amazon Goodreads review, but it's best to kind of understand what that 2 + 2 is and get different perspectives of it. Because it's funny, you may have a different perspective from the author themselves. And like, oh, they never thought about that in their own writing, based off your own personal experience. So similar to what Amy was saying, I think you want to make reviews as raw and real as possible, because it's interesting stuff. Like they say, an interesting person is an interested person. So you always want to focus on that 2 + 2 in the book and make it very personal with the author, more than publicly.
I like that a lot. Well, folks, we're starting to run low on time here, so I do want to jump to our final question, which is, any final parting words of wisdom for authors watching this? Or aspiring authors?
I think the one thing is that it's like, reviews are great, but the first important thing is the book itself, and it's damn hard to write a book and to, number 1, number 2, to get it published, and that's worthy of celebration on its own. And the book review is, again, a cherry on top that should be a meaningful journey, and that's something to look forward to and not feel super stressed by. And I think that's, like, a lot of authors are like, oh my god, I'm so stressed, like I don't have any reviews, but they forget about all the amazing, incredible hard work that they've put into in the beginning. So it's a balance of that. Treat yourself with patience and with kindness, especially for those of us who are rather hard on ourselves. And as Mackenzie says, like, make it like gamify it for yourself. Just prove to yourself that, like, I'm gonna try to get 10 reviews. And if the first one, like, they don't respond, then okay, like, let me just try something else, or like, let me make a different post. And that's like a way of self-improvement while seeking other people's reviews at the same time.
That was great. Wow. I have to say, like, a river cuts a rock not by its strength, but by its perseverance. The more and more you try and fail and fail and fail, you're enhancing your subconscious mind. And I think some advice I got, it was from that author I was talking about. She told me, like, the secret recipe is, if you're really struggling, especially if you're writing a novel, is before you go to sleep, you want to focus on one scene, just visualize it, and go to sleep with that idea. And that's where the subconscious mind plays, and you could have a great idea waking up the next morning. So that's what I got to say.
I love that. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I'm going to use that.
That'll plant the seed for some very interesting scenes, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm gonna dream about getting 1,000 reviews tomorrow, and it's gonna happen.
Manifest. Manifest. All right. Thank you both so much for your time today. We appreciate it very much. And your words of wisdom, your comments, all was just excellent. Had such a good time talking to you both.
Yes.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Had a fun time.
Had a fun time as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Oh, what a good chat. That one, it did start to feel like a mini therapy session a little
It
bit.
really
That was a
did.
good one.
You know, just like we're all in this together, kumbaya, kubayas. That was the vibe, honestly. But again, I'm so grateful for these coffee chats. I'm grateful for our broader audience, authors and aspiring authors. I'm obviously grateful for you. That was kind of a given. But this is just a quick plug for an upcoming coffee chat. We're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, banned books, and why that is just literally
Just why?
why. just why. And we'll talk all about it next week. So stay tuned for that coffee chat. And
The tea will be hot. Bring your
So
hot
hot.
cakes. Come and interact in the chat. We're ready
Please.
for it.
Absolutely.
And if you didn't have a chance to ask your question today live in the chat, we welcome questions down in the comments below because we do monitor these videos. We will come back and we will answer your questions. And if you have any idea for something else that you want us to talk about, you want to hear our hot takes, you want to spill the tea, or there's someone that you want to listen to talk about a topic, feel free to suggest it to us. We're open to things. Feel free to reach out to us, any of the doodly-doos below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Bye, beautiful people.
Bye, everyone.